This is Brett Strong. Recently, me and Frank Turek had a short radio debate, and I charged him right out the gate saying, hey, he cannot prove the Christian God exists. And what does Frank Turek do? Instead of trying to answer the charge of Brett Strong, the truth of Brett Strong, he takes it a different direction. He goes right into philosophy. How do you know belief? How do you know anything? How do you know? How do you know? And I'm like, Frank Turek, I charged you directly. You cannot prove your Christian God exists. Just admit it. And once you admit it, then why are you so dogmatic? Folks, this is a common tactic of people like Frank Turek and other Christian apologists. Instead of admitting the truth, they take you off into the woods to get you confused, so they don't ever have to answer the charge that they cannot prove the Christian God exists. So listen to this segment and you will see Frank Turek, he never ever even attempts to answer my charge that he cannot prove the Christian God exists. He tries to take me off into the woods, into philosophy, into how do you know anything? How do you know logic? How do you know? Folks, that way of doing things is fallacious. Think about it. If someone said they had a space alien in their house, and you said, okay, prove it to me, and they got into philosophy. Hey, how do you know anything? How do you know logic? How do you know? How do you know beliefs? Or how do you know? Wouldn't you find it rather odd? Wouldn't you say, like, dude, this is weird? You say you have a space alien in your house, prove it. I ask you to prove it, and you're coming back to me. What's philosophy? How do you know anything? How do you know logic? How do you know beliefs? How do you that you would say to the person who said they had a space alien in their house? You would say, dude, you've lost it. At this point, you're being mentally ill, because common sense says if you say this person or entity is real, then prove it. And if you can't prove it, then just get out my face and just go off in la la land with your space alien. And so I'm going to play this segment, and I want you to see how Frank Turek plays the game of trying to take me off into the bushes, because he knows he's defeated. He knows it. He doesn't want to admit it. So let me play you the piece and watch how he never answers the charge of Brett Strong that he cannot prove his God exists, and watch how he tries to get out of it by going into illogical, how do you know beliefs? How do you know we exist? How do you know? How do you know? Here it is, folks.
I want to know, like, all we have is the physical world. I'm an atheist. All there is the physical world. And to say, well, the Christian guy created it, you know, aren't you just selling fairy tales and myths to the world? Because you and I both know you can't prove any God exists. That's why there's millions of gods. So why would you just, why do you present your God as being factual versus being like, hey, this is just my belief, Frank Turek, and I believe Christian God, I can't prove it? Why not be honest like that versus maybe, to me, intellectually dishonest by promoting your God as if he's actually real and you can prove it when you can't?
Okay, Brett, let me ask you this. What do you mean by honest?
Honest is because you present your God as being factual.
Okay, but Brett,
and you should be honest and say, my God is a belief because I cannot prove it, so it's a belief.
Okay, but what do you mean by belief? Is a belief made of materials?
Belief is a thought process. So it's a thought process in the brain. Beliefs aren't in the sky or air. They're in people's and animal brains. So it's a thought process.
Okay, so if it's just in our brains, and every belief we have is a result of a previous material cause, why should we believe anything, including atheism?
Why should be? Well, I think you're jumping, tables here.
No, I'm not jumping tables.
No. But if you stick to just God, I mean, let's
Brett, hang on.
There's not much time, because you get into philosophy, and this is what people like you do. You switch
Brett,
the tables.
of course, hold on, Brett, of course we're getting into philosophy.
You see that? He admits it. Of course we get into philosophy. Folks, once again, to show you how fallacious Frank Turek is, if someone said they had a space alien in their house, and you said, okay, prove it, show me this space alien, and they got into philosophy, when you say, hey, dude, you've lost it. You're mentally ill in this area. You're brainwashed. You have mental issues. You need to see a therapist. And so that's what Frank Turek, that's what he does. Of course we get into philosophy. Think about it, folks. Let's look into the Bible. Like, the Bible is fiction. It's a bunch of fairy tales placed within a real ancient places like Israel and in Jerusalem. But anyway, just take the Bible. Imagine if Moses came. We're going to take the Bible as real for the sake of argument. Imagine if Moses came into Egypt and said, Pharaoh, my God is real, release my people. And Pharaoh said, reprove it. And Moses said, let's talk about philosophy, Pharaoh. How do you know anything? I mean, how do you know logic? I mean, how do you know beliefs? How do you know? Let's talk philosophy. Pharaoh would have just said, you know what, Moses, for that stupidity, I'm going to chop your head off. He would like, Moses, you're done. You're dead. Right? This is what Frank Turek does. Let's go into philosophy. Well, if we take that same attitude and apply it to his own Bible, it would be a joke. Moses coming to Pharaoh with philosophy. Pharaoh would say, dude, you're a whack job. Pharaoh wouldn't even, I don't think he would have killed Moses. He would have just laughed at him like, dude, take this guy to the psych ward right now. Imagine if Jesus in the Bible, Jesus is fiction too, but just say for the sake of argument, if it's real, Jesus would have came in the New Testament and say, hey, I'm God and God is real, and people was like, well, prove it. And Jesus said, well, let's talk about philosophy, folks. How do you know anything? I mean, the characters in the Bible would have laughed at Jesus like, dude, are you serious? Have you lost your freaking mind? You say you're God. You say there is a God, and we ask you to prove it, and you come with philosophy? Well, let's take it to out of the fantasy comic book, the Bible. Let's take it into reality, and you see what Frank Turek does. That's what he does. That's exactly what he does. Let's talk about philosophy. And the thing about it, folks, he doesn't even get it. He doesn't even get how ridiculous he's being. He doesn't. But if you take that same attitude that Frank presented to me, Brett Strong, and put it in the Bible and say, if Moses coming to Pharaoh and going to Israel saying, hey man, Israelites, God is real. How do you know? Well, let's talk philosophy. Frank Turek doesn't get it. Frank Turek has been God. Well, I'm going to play a piece right here where this is closer to truth. PhD host, Closer to Truth, Robert Lawrence. He flat out says to, William Lane Craig, can you prove God exists? And I give William Lane Craig credit here, where I cannot give Frank Turek. Frank Turek tries to take me off into the woods and get me confused. Well, at least William Lane Craig admits right here in front of PhD Robert Lawrence, like, hey, William Lane Craig says, no, I can't prove God exists. That's honest. Because God doesn't exist, because God is a fairy tale character in the Bible. That's why you can't prove he exists. But listen to Robert Lawrence flat out ask William Lane Craig about the existence of God. And at least William Lane Craig is being honest. Give me a moment. And it should be starting any
Bill,
second.
can the existence of God be demonstrated?
Well, I think that depends on what you mean by a demonstration, Robert. I don't think that you can demonstrate God's existence with mathematical certainty that will convince everyone.
Or make him appear right here.
Right. But I...
See? and let me continue on. He admits, William Lane Craig goes, well, I can give you some reasons. And that's cool. Watch. This is rare.
do think that there are good arguments for God's existence.
See? Arguments. People argue for space aliens. People argue for Zeus. People argue for Vishnu, Brahma. They argue for the Mormon God. Cults argue for their God. So I have no problem. American Indians argue for the Great Spirit. New Agers argue for their New Age God. So I have no problem with people making arguments about God, because God does not exist. So at least they're being honest, saying, hey, I cannot prove it, but these are my reasons. I respect that. People have their reasons for believing in space aliens. They have their reasons for believing in Bigfoot. People will believe in fairies, and they'll give you their reasons. They'll give you their arguments. I'm fine. They're all fanciful, and I have no problem with that. They're being honest. Hey, I can't prove it, but I'll give you my personal reasons why I believe. That's cool. You know what? People do that when they're being honest. Say, I can't prove it, but this is what I believe. Fine. Life is hard, folks, and if you need a immaterial Christian God, a fictional God to make you feel better and get you through life, fine. Other people, they may need space aliens to make them feel better, fine. Other people, they may need the New Age God, that's fine. American Indians, like the Great Spirit, that's fine. Life is hard. Do what you got to do to get by. But if you're going to be dogmatic like Frank Turek, I'm going to have to call you on it. And I'm calling Frank Turek on it. He's bluffing. And he's not being direct. He's being indirect. He tried to take me off into philosophy. God is not, the Christian God is not real. And now listen to this segment right here. Now listen to this. And you're going to hear William Lane Craig admit the truth that the Christian God is a concept. Folks, what's the meaning of concept? The meaning of concept is something thought or imagined. Concept is, synonyms of concept are theory, hypothesis, notion. So William Lane Craig admits when he's pushed to the wall, like, yeah, my Christian God, I can't prove it. The Christian God is a concept, an ideal, a theory, a hypothesis, a notion, something imagined, which flows beautifully into the Christian God is fake, it's fiction. That's why one really has to admit, hey, even if you want to believe the Christian God is real, you have to, when you're pushed to the wall, you have to say, okay, the Christian God is a concept. It's something imagined. And that flows right into Brett Strong's truth that the Christian God is fiction. Now listen to William Lane Craig admit the truth that God is imagined, a concept, a theory, which makes perfect sense because the Christian God is fiction.
What kind of God it is. So who or what is the God you're talking about?
Well, I'm talking about a concept of a personal...
And you said that? You hear that? A concept. He's being honest. That's William Lane Craig, folks. Top Christian apologist in the world. So Frank Turek, go to your own peers and learn something. Go to William Lane Craig and learn that, hey, Frank Turek, William Lane would tell you, hey, God is a concept. You can't prove God exists. So Frank Turek, you've been exposed by Brett Strong. I love you, bro. We're going to have some beers. We're going to do some shots. But I got to call the truth on you where, you just cannot prove your God exists because he's fiction. So it makes perfect sense. You can't prove your God exists. So just admit it. So the next time we do a radio debate, Frank Turek, just admit to Brett Strong. You can't prove it. And since you can't prove it, then why are you dogmatic? Just take your fairy tale beliefs and be happy and spread love. But don't be dogmatic. Because people like me, Brett Strong, will call you on it. And so don't try to take people off in the woods either. It works for people who don't have the understanding that Brett Strong has. People like me understand, like, hey, you're taking me off into the woods. I don't want to go there because I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to get me confused. You're trying to get me off the subject that you can't prove your God exists. Because you can't, because he's fiction. So this is Brett Strong signing off. Frank Turek, until our next radio debate, have a great day.